one of the first questions I ask when I speak to parents, teachers, students, I'm going to go ask it in a few minutes after this interview, is how do you personally define success? And the reason that we ask that question is because so much of parents' actions and children's actions and even teachers' actions are really rooted in that definition of success. And if your definition of success is what we hear from parents, happiness and health and well-being and giving back to society and being a good friend, that's lovely. But when I talk to the students of those very same parents and I say, how do you think your parents define success? We hear money, test scores, where you go to college, etc., right? So really different definitions of success, and that's going to be a foundation that really affects the actions that you take. And so really there's this sort of underbelly of success is about getting into the top schools, colleges, having the best test scores, to get the best job, to make the most money. And if that's your definition of success, it can cause a lot of stress. And that's really why we named our whole program Challenge Success. And in our logo, success is flipped backwards because we're challenging that very narrow, traditional kind of definition and saying it's much broader than that. It's about the things that when you ask parents to say out loud, they say happiness, health, well-being, give back to society, learn how to be a friend and have friendship in your life, right? And unfortunately, the education system, both here and in India, from what I know, is not set up to really foster that in a way that runs counter to that definition. I think as parents, we all pass on messages. In the United States, we wear our college sweatshirts. And we have bumper stickers on the car of where our kids are going to school, or we have bumper stickers on the car that says, my child is an honors student in such and such school. We have a trend when the kids come home from school for you to say, how did you do on the test today? It's a very fine question to ask, but when it's the first question you ask when your kid walks in the door, you're sending that, like you said, subtle message that grades and test scores are the most important thing that you care about and that could happen to a child during a day at school. And so we want people to understand that there's negative mental health ramifications that are coming from these subtle definitions of success that are being passed on to the kids. That if the first thing you ask about is grades and test scores, if everything in your home is about getting the grade to get into a certain university, you are actually sending a message to kids to cheat, to stay up late and not get the sleep they need, to be perfect and sort of uber perfect, people as they walk the earth. And that's a lot of pressure for kids to handle. And there's a whole demographic out there that looks at that definition and says, I'm not even going to try to play that game. I'm not going to engage at all in school because I'll never be that perfect student, so why try? So it's really affecting a whole range of students, these definitions of success. And what should the parents say to the kids? So one thing could just be literally, how was your day? And I'm a parent, I know when you say how was your day, they say fine or boring or whatever. But to really think of conversations about things that matter to you. Tell me one thing that you got really excited about in school. And if they say nothing, okay, tell me what the lesson was of the day. Let's just talk without judgment about grades, without judgment about have you done your homework yet, without judgment about did you study for the test. Let's talk about the values that matter to us. Did you make a friend? What is one kind thing you did this week, right? What excites you or engages you in school, out of school? It can be out of school too. What we're trying to create is really curious, passionate, balanced, healthy, civic-minded students. And that means they have to think about more than just their studies, way more than just their studies. So at Challenge Success, we basically say we're after well-being, which includes physical and mental health. It means getting enough sleep. Most people don't realize that amount of sleep kids need, the amount of sleep adults need, Do you want me to tell the numbers? 8 to 10 hours for adolescents, 9 to 11 for younger students. Even the very young may need 12. Adults need 7 to 9. Most of us are not getting nearly enough sleep. And there's a lot of research out on the importance of sleep, how it connects to academics. You want to really do well in school, you want to have your kids do well in school, put them to bed. It's hands down really, really good stuff coming out to know what's going on when we sleep. Another sign of health, besides physical and mental well-being, is engagement with learning. So given the way the world is, it's less important that they get top grades on things that they've memorized in English or math or social studies. What we really need them to have are the skills they need to survive in this century, in the next century, etc. So resilience, a growth mindset, right? I can do this. I'm not a math person. No. You are a math person. We all are. How do we grow and learn? Adaptability, flexibility, the ability to bounce back from mistakes, the ability to be creative, the ability to think critically, and to have really good communication skills. So at home, you can reinforce all of those kinds of skills. A lot of times they're called 21st century skills, instead of let's go study for the history test right now. So one thing that I say to parents all the time is talk about your own mistakes. I mean, a lot of times we don't talk to kids as if our lives matter. And to say, I made a silly mistake today. Can you believe I did this? And look, I bounced right back and my boss didn't yell at me. And that mistake led to a really positive thing. You can model engagement with learning. You can say, I don't know the answer to that question, but let's go together and look it up. That's a fabulous question. To really encourage curiosity and creativity. You can, if the rare time that you are helping with homework, let's say, you might, instead of jumping in and correcting, you might say, what do you think? We've failed to ask that question many, many times. What do you think is a great question to ask kids and to allow them to weigh in. And a little bit of struggle is actually really important because then they see after struggle comes the fruition. And again, it's going to depend on the developmental stage of the kid. So if they know how to read already, they should be capable of doing their own homework. And when they don't understand something, instead of when they come to you and say, Mom, can you help me? Or Mom, can you do it for me? You can say, actually, that's a great question to take and ask your teacher. The kid might get upset about that, right? No, I have to do this, I have to turn it in. You're actually teaching a really good lesson of how to seek help. That we don't expect people to know it all. In the society, there's a lot of places to go for help. It is really much better practice to say, what do you think the answer is? Why do you think that's the right answer? Put it down, let's see what the teacher says. The teachers actually don't want the parents to correct the homework, and they certainly don't want the parents to do the homework, right? That defeats the whole point of the homework. We have a whole workshop where you have to think, what in the long run is going to benefit my child most? There might be a little bit of discomfort when they turn in an incomplete project or they get a bunch of wrong answers on this assignment, but in the long run, they're going to learn about how to make mistakes, how to be resilient, how to bounce back, how to ask for help, right? How to struggle through a challenge. That's really important. So when you're about to sit down and grade your kid's homework or take out the red pen, I want you to ask yourself, in the long run, is this best for my child, given what we know they're going to need to really thrive? Failure is really important. I was just talking to a mom who said, oh, the school and they're all saying failure is important. In my house, I don't want my kids to fail. This is not okay in my house. And I said, you know what? I understand where you're coming from, but I want you to think about the kinds of jobs and positions and the kind of global economy and the kind of knowledge our kids are going to need. There's going to be plenty of times where they make mistakes. So when you're saying you must be perfect and it's not okay to fail, you're sending a message that is really not achievable, particularly for a kid in 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, 15 years old. So to really step back and say, where is this coming from? We want our kids to be responsible. We want them to do their work and to try. We want them to put forth effort. That's a very different message from a parent as your grades aren't high enough, you need to do better. You need to get better marks. School is the most important thing. So I try to talk to this mom, and I get it. I understand where she's coming from. There's a fear that if you don't create the perfect child, that child is going to be living in squalor, right? In the United States, there's a college called Yale, which is an Ivy League university. And I have, honest to goodness, had students come up to me and say, it's Yale or jail. They really believe it's go to this prestigious university or I'm going to end up really a failure. And I think college admissions drives a lot in the United States. My guess is the same in certain parts of India as well. A lot of the behavior and a lot of the stress. And what we have to get across to people is, first of all, and I know this is a little scary, you could have perfect grades and perfect scores and still not get into the university of your dreams. To put all that pressure on such a high stakes examination is not healthy. One thing I would say to a parent who has a kid about to embark on this process is certain things we absolutely know. We know you will do better on an exam if you sleep. If you are not sleep deprived, if you get enough sleep going up to the exam, I'm not just talking about the night before. There's a lot of good research about a week, 2 weeks, a month, right? You don't want to be in a sleep deprived state. Your brain doesn't function, you will not be able to recall, your memory will be different. So that would be one thing. Another thing would be really to have this attitude of, you can do this, you are prepared for this, and you don't have to be perfect. The fear of being perfect actually makes kids who know how to do certain answers make the mistakes because they have such test anxiety that the fear takes over. So a very calming, you can do this is what the schools have prepared you for, you're going to get a good night's sleep, leading up to this exam, we love you no matter what. That is a very important thing. We love you no matter what. That our love for you as our child does not depend on how you do on this exam. And however you do, we will make it work, we will support you, there will be a place for you to continue your education. I think we hear from a lot of students, my parents won't love me. I will be letting them down if I don't do well on this exam. And that creates so much more anxiety. For whatever I'm saying that you should say to the kid, you should also say to yourself, right? I got this, I'm not a failure as a parent. If my kid doesn't do well, I want to be sending the right messages to my child and as a family, right? But there's some good research about actually writing down your fears. So as a parent, you might want to write down your fears. What's the worst thing that could happen? Write down your fears for a little bit and put the paper away or rip the paper up. Have your child write down their fears. What's the worst thing that can happen? I'm not going to do well on the exam. Okay, write that down. What happens if you don't do well on the exam? I'm not going to get into XYZ college or whatever it is. I'm going to be digging ditches in the middle of the country, right? Put down the worst fears and then logically walk them through. There are always other options. And most likely now that you've gotten those fears out of the way, the child is going to do better on the exam. They've done this with university students. They've done this with high school students in the United States. I don't know if they've done it in India, but the message behind it is all this fear that's causing all this angst and stress, get it out on paper, and then it's done. Another thing would be breathing, right? Breathing exercises, meditation, yoga. Exercise before the exam is a nice way to get your brain ready, get your body ready, right? Lots of things, it's sort of the opposite of what people think. Study, study, study. No, stay up late, cram more in your brain. No, that's the worst thing you can do. To really do well on the exam, have a good night's sleep, eat a good breakfast. Maybe you want to take a brisk walk before the exam to get yourself going. Don't, the morning of the exam, go over and try to review everything. You're going to make a mistake. It's going to freak you out. So calm, calm, calm is the message during the exam time. I think it's important for the student to be familiar with the way the exam is, maybe be familiar with how to answer some of the questions, what the different sections of the exam look like. We don't want any surprises on the day of the exam. And my guess is that most schools prepare the kids in this way. I don't want the parents to feel like you have to do it all. Your kids are going to schools, and the schools are probably doing their part to get the kids ready for the exam. If you're unsure, I would ask the teachers and ask the school, rather than dive in and try to do your own kind of test prep at home, or even the need to hire a private tutor. It may not be necessary. The school might be doing exactly what they need to do for that kid. So I would take the cue from the school on this one. So I think what learning should be about should really be some of the things that I mentioned earlier, these 21st century skills of curiosity and passion and critical thinking skills and communication skills, right? Those are, and learning how to make mistakes and bounce back and thinking outside the box. And so hopefully there are schools in India that are teaching that more so than just focusing on the subject, where they look at the student as the whole child, where they look at them and have physical education and recess and making sure kids are well fed and that they're learning how to be good friends to one another. But I think a really important thing is joy. If you look at sort of schooling today, and particularly the very traditional schooling, the kids are miserable. They hate it, and we really could be turning them off to learning in a world where they're going to have to learn and learn and learn and relearn things multiple times over their lifetime. So it shouldn't look the way that you experience school, right? This is what I say to the parents in the United States. You're not driving the same car as you did 30 years ago. You're not talking on the same phone as you did 30 years ago. Your child should not be undergoing the same education that you went through 30 years ago, because we know so much more now about how the brain works, right? We put people in MRI machines to watch them learn math. We didn't even have MRI machines 30 years ago. So I want the parents to really think through, what is the best education for my kid? It should look very different from the kind of education you got, and should really be fostering joy, curiosity, and very important skills of flexibility, adaptability, decision making, etc. So here's the thing about technology. I'm certainly not against technology. I think that we put a lot of money into technology in schools that gets us, again, away from this foundational definition of success. If the technology can help a kid learn all those things that I just talked about, critical thinking and creativity and adaptability, if it turns them on to learning, because you hand them a camera and say, go film your neighborhood and figure out what problems you want to solve, I'm all for it. But if it's just technology for technology's sake, or everybody must learn to code because we want everyone to code, you might turn off some people that way. So I'm not against teaching everyone to code, but I think as we have to think about technology, what is the role? What is the bigger picture? How does it help relate to the full definition of success that we're talking about? There will always be a need for a teacher-student relationship. Now, you can have that through technology, right? But the teacher can't disappear from the equation. The teacher is very, very important. The teacher determines, is really the judge of whether or not the student is learning. You can look at test scores, you can look at grades. Like I said earlier, kids can cheat, kids can guess, right? The teacher is the heart of education. The teacher-student relationship, I should say, is the heart of the education of that child. So no, I don't think technology should take over. I think it can be a tool, I think it could help, but it should not take over. The children's role is to really be a partner with the school and with the parent, and have an open mind, and take care of themselves, as they get older, and not overload, and keep the big picture in mind, and really think about what it is they want to get out of schooling. The parent's role is to help guide that successfully and make sure that you have, again, the big picture in mind. You want a healthy 35-year-old, 45-year-old, 55-year-old. So that means they have to take care of their body. They have to get the sleep they need. They have to get the exercise they need. They have to find schooling joyous and interesting, and if it's not what they do in school, they should have some kind of passion or curiosity that they're following. And the school's role is really to help shepherd that, and to not put it all on the home, just like the home shouldn't put it all on the school. The parent plays a very important role. You have to love your child unconditionally. You have to be your child's cheerleader. But I'll use the soccer analogy, which I don't know if you call it football or soccer. Okay, so football. Kids are playing football. You're standing on the side cheering. You would never think to run onto the field, lift your child's leg, and help them kick the ball. And unfortunately, that's what we're doing when we grade their homework and check their homework and ask them about this and test prep and everything. The parents are running onto the field and overstepping their role. You need to cheer from the side. You need to get them the uniform. You're in charge of getting them ready and prepared for football, but you're not playing football for them, and you're not running around moving their legs for them. And you're not bubble wrapping them and preventing them from falling. When they fall, you're gonna say, "Hey, that's okay. Are you okay? Keep it going. I'm here for you if you need me." But you're not overstepping that role.